Chapter 1. The Fire You Forgot. What if I told you that somewhere inside you, buried beneath years of compromise, fear, and forgetfulness, there is a fire? Not a metaphor. Not a concept. A real, roaring, ancient fire. The kind that raised empires and tore down tyrants. The kind that pulled steel from stone, built railroads across continents, carved nations out of wilderness. You have forgotten it, but it has not forgotten you. Every time your heart beats just a little faster when you see someone doing what you wish you could. Every time your stomach twists when you hear a voice telling you it's too late. That's not anxiety. That's your fire trying to scream through the noise. Before the world trained you to shrink, before they measured you, labeled you, and sorted you like cargo, you were limitless. There was no ceiling, no clock, no boundary but the edge of your own imagination. So why did you stop? Not all at once. The world is smarter than that. It breaks you slowly. 1,000 little concessions. Smile when you don't mean it. Sit still. Don't dream too big. Fit in. Be realistic. Wait your turn. Turn by turn, you gave your fire away. And you called it growing up. But tell me this. When did growing up become synonymous with giving up? The same world that told you to tame yourself once knelt before men who refused to bow. Edison burned through 10,000 failures to drag light from the dark. Carnegie crossed an ocean with nothing, and by force of will, bent steel to serve his vision. Walt Disney, fired for lacking imagination, dreamed a kingdom into existence from a park bench. Lincoln, carved from poverty and pain, stood taller than any room he entered. They were not lucky. They were relentless. They fed their fire. And now it's your turn. Not in some distant future. Not someday when things are easier. Not after I finish this phase of life. Because the truth is this. You are not waiting on a sign. You are waiting on permission. And no one is coming to give it. So give yourself 6 months. 6 months of radical clarity. 6 months of ruthless discipline. 6 months of becoming unrecognizable. You don't need more time. You need decision. The same hours exist in your day as in the day of those who broke the world open. The same biology. The same breath. The same bones. The difference? They remembered. They remembered that greatness doesn't arrive. It is forged. Not once, but over and over, in the fire you build inside yourself. This is not a speech. This is a summons. And you know it. You can feel it in your chest like thunder before the storm. You were not born for comfort. You were born to construct mountains from nothing. You were born to bend reality with your hands. You were born to build. But the world has buried you in noise. Noise that says you need to be fixed before you begin. Noise that says success is for the chosen few. Noise that says it's too late, or too soon, or too risky. Let me silence the noise for you, permanently. No one is more chosen than the one who chooses themselves. The next 6 months will not wait for your convenience. They will ask everything from you. Your comfort, your distractions, your excuses, your fear, your delusion. But in return, they will give you yourself, your real self, the one before the disappointment, before the guilt, before the heartbreak, before the numbness. That self still exists, still waits, still watches for the day you return. And that day begins now. There is no perfect starting point, no ideal mood, or moment, or calendar date. There is only you, as you are, bleeding, scared, hopeful, broken, hungry. And that is enough. Because no oak asks to be a tree before it breaks the seed. No dawn asks for permission to burn. And no legacy asks if the world is ready. So listen, not to me, to you, to that part of you that is still wild, still untouched. The part that survived everything they threw at you. The part that kept beating even when it didn't know why. That's your compass now. Point it toward the impossible and walk. You will stumble. You will question. You will ache. But you will not stop. Not this time. Because this is not about motivation. This is about awakening. And once you awaken, you can never go back to sleep. You're not here to be liked. You're not here to follow the script. You're not here to make yourself smaller so others feel tall. You are here to disrupt. To electrify. To make your ancestors and your descendants stand still in awe and whisper, "It began with them." 6 months. That's all. It won't be easy. It will be worth it. And one day, when the mirror no longer frightens you, when your voice no longer shakes when you speak your dreams aloud, when the fire has grown so big it sets others ablaze just by your presence, you'll remember this moment. This exact one. The one where you finally decided to walk through the fire, to be who you were always meant to be, and to never, ever go back. Chapter 2. The Mind is a Weapon. There comes a moment in every life when a person must decide whether their thoughts will be a sanctuary or a slaughterhouse, whether the mind will be the forge of all possibility, or the slow poison that drips doubt into every corner of ambition until nothing remains but the memory of who they could have been. The world may hand you limitations, but only your mind can make them permanent. And if you don't seize control of that battlefield, you will spend your life fighting wars that were never yours to begin with. The truth, the part no one wants to admit out loud, is that the most dangerous thing in your life is not your circumstances, not your childhood, not your enemies, and not even your failures. It is the undisciplined, directionless mind that spins in circles, repeating the same fears dressed in different disguises, building imaginary prisons with real consequences. The wrong thought, repeated often enough, becomes a belief. And a belief, left unchecked, becomes your blueprint for reality. You have to understand, what you allow yourself to believe is what you grant yourself permission to become. You want transformation? Then let me be blunt. It begins in the place no one sees. It begins with your inner dialogue, the silent monologue that runs beneath every decision you make, every risk you refuse, every opportunity you let rot on the vine because the voice inside said, "That's not for people like me." Who told you that? Where did that voice come from? Because you weren't born with it. You didn't come into this world afraid of failing, or ashamed of dreaming, or convinced you needed permission to live out loud. That voice was constructed. And if it was constructed, it can be destroyed. If it was taught, it can be unlearned. But not through hope. Not through surface-level affirmations you don't even believe yet. Through war. Through confrontation. Through disciplines so relentless that your mind has no choice but to fall in line. People love to say that your thoughts shape your reality, but what they don't say, what they don't understand, is that shaping your thoughts requires violence. Mental violence. You don't gently remove decades of fear, guilt, trauma, self-doubt, and scarcity from your mind. You rip it out. You dismantle it. You interrogate it. You throw it against the wall and scream, "Where did you come from?" And then you replace it, thought by thought, line by line, with beliefs forged in clarity, purpose, and fire. The mind is a weapon, but an undisciplined weapon turns inward. You think a powerful mind feels good? It feels like hunger. It feels like conflict. It feels like waking up every day with the urge to fall back into old patterns, and standing in front of that urge with a sword in your hand, saying, "Not today. Not ever again." You don't rise by accident. You rise by standing guard at the gates of your own consciousness and refusing to let anything weaker than your future take root in your soil. Look at every great architect of history, not the ones who inherited legacies, but the ones who built them. Da Vinci, Tesla, Napoleon. These were not men born with superior tools. They were men who refused to let their minds rot in mediocrity. Their minds were trained like warhorses, taught to endure, to attack, to carry the weight of impossible ideas and deliver them into reality, even when no one believed in them. Especially then. You want to build a new life in 6 months? Then start here. Not with planners and schedules and surface-level goal setting. Start with the purging of anything in your mental atmosphere that breeds hesitation. Start with absolute intolerance for thoughts that waste your energy, insult your potential, or mimic the voice of people who never dared to chase what you're after. Your mind is your first battleground. And until you win there, you will lose everywhere else. Every excuse you've ever told yourself came from an undisciplined mind. Every time you talked yourself out of taking the shot, every time you shrunk yourself in the presence of the life you actually want, that was not weakness, it was mismanagement. You have to become a surgeon with your attention. Ruthless with your focus. You need to take every intrusive thought and hold it up to the light and ask, does this move me forward, or does it feed my old self? If it feeds the version of you that settles, deletes it. If it feeds the version of you that avoids pain, erases it. If it reinforces a life you're trying to escape, you cut it. No mercy. No negotiation. This is where most people stop, right here. Not because they don't have the talent. Not because they don't have the time. But because it is easier to fantasize about success than to fight the inner war that leads to it. It's easier to binge another video, save another quote, talk about potential like it's currency, than it is to sit alone with your thoughts and ask the hard questions. What am I afraid of? Why do I keep running from discomfort? Why am I loyal to a belief system that gives me nothing but regret in return? If you don't ask these questions now, life will ask them for you later, louder, harsher, with less grace. So ask them now. And answer them like your life depends on it. Because it does. The mind is not neutral ground. It is either a launch pad or a cage. You're either directing your thoughts like a general commands his army, or you are being conquered by them every day you choose distraction over design. Every day you let self-doubt go unchallenged. Every day you let scarcity masquerade as realism. And let me tell you this, the world will applaud your mediocrity as long as you stay predictable. It will clap for your balance, your comfort zone, your fake humility. But the second you start rewriting the code, when you start speaking and acting and walking like someone who believes they are here for more, you will meet resistance. Internal first, then external. Because a mind that rises disrupts everything it touches. That's the point. You want to rise? Then prepare to be hated by the version of yourself that once found safety in the shadows. That voice in your head will scream, "You're not ready." Laugh at it. That voice will say, "What if you fail?" Thank it for the warning and then fail anyway. That voice will whisper, "What will they think?" And you will look it in the eye and say, "They'll think nothing, because they are not me, and they will not decide my life." This is the mental rewiring that begins transformation. This is the invisible war every great creator, thinker, and leader has fought. They are not different from you. They just declared mental sovereignty earlier. They stopped being a victim of thought and became a master of it. And they built from there. Now it's your turn. 6 months of psychological warfare, fought with clarity and won with intention. 6 months of waking up and deciding, before the world speaks, before the fear shows up, that your mind will belong to you today. And if you lose the battle one morning, you don't spiral. You reset. That same hour. That same breath. Because resilience is not perfection. Resilience is refusal. Refusal to stay in darkness 1 second longer than necessary. Chapter 3. Clarity is a weapon of the few. There is a kind of silent suffering that eats away at people from the inside out, not loud enough to break them, but persistent enough to leave them hollow. It doesn't come from failure. It doesn't come from fear. It comes from the fog. From waking up every day with a gnawing sense that something is missing, that something greater is possible, but not knowing exactly what it is or how to reach it. That is the paralysis of the unclear mind. That is what happens when people drift through life wearing the costume of productivity while secretly starving for direction. We live in a world that worships movement but has forgotten meaning. People hustle, grind, post, build, chase, and half the time they have no idea what they're even trying to catch. They confuse activity with progress. They measure their value in tasks completed rather than truths confronted. They sprint without asking if the road they're on leads anywhere worth going. And then they wonder why, after all the effort, they still feel lost. They still feel like ghosts in their own story. Clarity is not a luxury. It's not a bonus round you get once everything else is stable. It is the foundation, the place where all transformation begins. Because a mind that is not anchored in purpose will drown in distraction. And there is no discipline strong enough, no motivation loud enough, no strategy brilliant enough to save you if you are committed to chasing what does not belong to you. Do you want to know why the greats stand apart? Why some people build legacies while others just survive routines? It's not intelligence. It's not talent. It's not even luck. It's that the greats, from the moment they committed, burned every other path but one. They made the internal decision that they would live in pursuit of something so clear, so sharp, so undeniable that everything else in life had to reorganize itself around that truth. Lincoln didn't wake up one day and stumble into leadership. He agonized over the weight of moral clarity in a nation tearing itself apart. Carnegie didn't just build wealth. He built it with the singular, ruthless vision that industry could be transformed and that men born into nothing could rise like kings. Disney didn't draw cartoons. He visualized entire worlds before the pencil even touched paper. These were not acts of talent. These were acts of clarity. Violent, unapologetic clarity. If you don't choose your direction, the world will hand you one. And it will not be yours. It will be designed to keep you comfortable, contained, easily categorized, and always one step below your real potential. That is how systems are maintained. That is how mediocrity survives. By flooding the atmosphere with just enough noise to keep you from hearing the sound of your own calling. And so many people stay in that noise their entire lives. They stay busy. They stay stressed. They stay surrounded. But they never stop. They never step back and ask themselves the one question that terrifies them more than any fear of failure, more than any fear of rejection, more than any fear of risk. What do I actually want? Not what I've been told to want. Not what my parents wanted. Not what society sells me as success. But me. The unfiltered truth beneath the fear. That question is a sword. And most people are afraid to pick it up because deep down they know it will cut through everything they've built to protect their comfort. But you are not here for comfort. You are here to see clearly. You are here to strip away everything false, everything borrowed, everything that doesn't belong in the future you are building. You are here to sit in silence long enough that the noise finally dies and the real voice, the one you drowned years ago, gets a chance to speak again. And when it does, it won't whisper. It will roar. It will roar names, places, visions, blueprints, obsessions, truths so clear they will terrify you with how long you've ignored them. That's the cost of clarity. It confronts you. It exposes what you've tolerated. It shines a light on the versions of you that were designed to survive but never allowed to thrive. And once you see it, once you taste that clarity, you can't go back. You can't pretend that average is acceptable. You can't fake excitement over lives that no longer fit your design. Because clarity is irreversible. It shifts your standards, and with new standards comes new suffering, the suffering of becoming. You want to change your life in 6 months? Then don't start by asking what you need to do. Start by asking who you need to become. What kind of life would electrify your soul so intensely that even the thought of quitting would feel like a betrayal? What would you wake up for with fire in your lungs and weight in your steps? What vision would demand so much from you that your old habits couldn't survive its atmosphere? Clarity is a weapon, but it's also a burden. Because once you hold it, you can no longer claim ignorance. Once you've seen the real road, every detour becomes a form of self-sabotage. You'll find yourself in rooms that once felt impressive and now feel shallow. Conversations that once entertained you will feel empty. The people who once reflected your old self will begin to feel like anchors, not allies. And this is the part no one warns you about. Clarity isolates before it elevates. You will lose things. You will outgrow people. You will have to walk alone before anyone understands what you're building. But that's the toll. That's the price of becoming someone who no longer needs the world's approval to move forward. You'll begin to recognize how rare this path is, not because others aren't capable, but because they never stopped long enough to look up from the chaos and ask, where am I really going? And who am I really becoming along the way? You are here, in this very moment, because a part of you is done playing small. A part of you has tasted enough of the shallow life to realize it can never satisfy. A part of you is ready, terrified maybe, but ready to wipe the slate clean and draw something real. Something aligned. Something worth waking up for. 6 months of radical clarity will change more than most people change in 6 years. But only if you're willing to go there. Only if you're willing to silence the world long enough to hear your own voice rise again. Only if you're willing to sit down with your pain, your longing, your gifts, your rage, your joy, and ask every one of them to point toward the same star. Because when they do, when your entire internal world aligns toward one burning, non-negotiable truth, There is nothing outside you that can stop what's coming next. Chapter 4. Purpose is a demanding master. Most people aren't suffering from a lack of time, or talent, or opportunity. What they're really suffering from is a lack of purpose, a hollow space inside them that no amount of entertainment, comfort, or convenience can fill. And they try. They try endlessly to drown that emptiness in noise, through work, through scrolling, through consumption, through validation, through anything that keeps them from having to sit still and ask the terrifying question, why am I really here? You can run from a lot of things in life, but you cannot outrun the absence of purpose. That ache you feel in the quiet moments, that restlessness, that sense of disconnection, that nagging suspicion that there must be something more, it's not a flaw in your system. It's a signal. It's the internal alarm that your life is drifting too far from the meaning it was meant to carry. It's your soul's refusal to settle for a life that looks good from the outside but feels hollow on the inside. And here's the brutal truth. Purpose isn't something you casually stumble upon while waiting for the right mood or the perfect moment. It doesn't show up wrapped in clarity. It doesn't knock politely and ask if you're ready. Purpose demands to be discovered, and once it is, it demands to own you. It is not a hobby. It is not a weekend retreat. It is not something you add to your schedule when it's convenient. Purpose is a master. It requires submission, discipline, and devotion. And it does not apologize for how much it will demand from you. The moment you find it, the real thing, not the idea that looks good on a vision board but the truth that cracks your chest open, you will never be the same again. It will ruin every false version of success you ever accepted. It will disrupt your routines. It will wake you up at night. It will interrupt your conversations. It will outgrow your excuses. And if you let it, it will build you into someone you never imagined you could become. But first, it will test you. Purpose always tests its host, because it needs to know if you're strong enough to carry the weight of it. It doesn't show up and sprinkle magic into your life. It shows up like fire and says, burn what you were, so I can show you what you are. And that's where most people run. Because they want the light without the heat. They want the reward without the restructuring. But purpose doesn't negotiate. It doesn't fit into your comfort zone. It destroys it. You want to change everything in 6 months? Then you need to stop asking what you feel like doing and start asking what your life was built to do. You were not born to pay bills and die. You were not born to numb yourself with routine and call it adulthood. You were not born to silence your instincts because someone once told you your voice was too loud, your dreams too wild, your vision too unrealistic. You were born with fingerprints that never existed before and will never exist again. That is not a mistake. That is a mandate. And if you don't honor it, the world loses something it will never get back. Purpose does not ask, what's realistic? It asks, what's necessary? It looks you in the eye and says, you were built for this, whether you feel ready or not. And in that moment, you will face the fork in the road where most people retreat. Back into safety, back into mediocrity, back into the crowd. But you will know, deep down, that you were never meant for the crowd. You were meant to build something with your life. Something that echoes. Something that disrupts. Something that matters. And if that sounds too heavy, too intense, too much, good. That means you're finally waking up. Because purpose is not supposed to feel comfortable. It's supposed to feel sacred. It's supposed to scare you. It's supposed to drag you out of your distractions and say, enough. You were not made for smallness. You were made for fire. The kind of fire that reshapes landscapes, not just in the world around you, but inside of you. Your old self will not survive what purpose requires. That's the point. You're not just building new habits. You're building a new identity, one that can withstand the heat of living aligned. And this alignment? It won't come with applause. It won't come with instant support. It won't come with clarity handed to you on a silver platter. It will come in fragments, whispers, moments of deep certainty wrapped in days of confusion. And you will chase those fragments anyway. Because that's what it means to follow purpose. It means walking through fog, with fire in your gut, refusing to let the darkness make you forget what the light once revealed. Think of every revolutionary in history, every builder, every visionary, every titan who stood on the edge of the impossible and refused to step back. They weren't lucky. They weren't chosen. They were committed. They carried something inside them that was louder than their fear, stronger than their circumstances, more sacred than the opinions of the crowd. And what they carried, what drove them, was purpose. That was the fuel. That was the compass. That was the fire that made them show up when no one was watching, when everything felt uncertain, when failure was a guarantee but quitting was not an option. Now ask yourself, what is your fire? What idea keeps coming back? What part of you refuses to die, no matter how many times you try to silence it? What truth keeps whispering, you are more than this, even when you pretend not to hear it? That's where your purpose lives. And once you name it, once you carve it into your mind like stone, everything changes. Your time reorganizes itself. Your circle begins to shift. Your energy stops bleeding into things that don't serve the mission. And most of all, you become dangerous to anything that once distracted you. Because a person with purpose cannot be manipulated. They cannot be seduced by comfort, or convenience, or comparison. Their steps are ordered. Their pain has meaning. Their effort has direction. Their suffering becomes sacred. This isn't about being motivated. This isn't about feeling inspired. This is about answering the call to become who you were designed to be. Not later, not when it's easy, not when you're ready. Because life doesn't ask for readiness. It asks for commitment. And if you can commit, fully, brutally, irreversibly, then purpose will meet you halfway. But if you hesitate, if you play small, if you dip your toe in the ocean and then wonder why the tide doesn't carry you, then understand this. Purpose does not serve the timid. It serves the committed. It serves the all-in. And it gives its gifts only to those who are willing to give up who they were in exchange for who they must become. You've wasted enough time pretending you don't know who you are. 6 months. One decision. Full clarity. Ruthless purpose. This is how everything begins. Chapter 5. Discipline is divine. There's a reason discipline feels like such a heavy word. It's because we've been taught to associate it with punishment instead of power. We've been conditioned to see it as the enemy of freedom, when in truth, discipline is the only thing that will ever set you free. Free from the chaos of your lower self. Free from the noise of the world. Free from the gravitational pull of every comfort, every excuse, every fleeting emotion that tries to pull you off course. Discipline isn't chains. It's structure. It's the skeleton that holds your vision upright when your mood collapses. And without it, you're not free. You're just impulsive, reactive, untethered, and ultimately forgettable. Look around. The modern world celebrates addiction to convenience. It glorifies instant gratification. It markets laziness as lifestyle and labels it self-care. It romanticizes burnout while simultaneously ridiculing structure. And that's why so many people live in cycles of start and stop, high and crash, motivation and shame, because they are chasing results without foundation. They are chasing transformation without the one thing that gives it legs: discipline. It's not glamorous. It's not loud. It doesn't always come with a dopamine hit. But it builds empires. Quietly. Daily. Relentlessly. Every person you admire, every story that inspires you, every legacy you look up to, was constructed brick by brick under the rule of discipline. Carnegie didn't rise from factory floors to steal empire by doing what he felt like doing. He did what was required, whether it was convenient or not. Edison didn't give the world light by getting lucky on his first try. He failed over 10,000 times and kept showing up with the same obsession, the same routine, the same discipline. Kobe Bryant didn't become a global icon by accident. He practiced for hours before practice. Not because it was easy, because it was non-negotiable. Discipline is not about denying yourself joy. It's about delaying it until it's earned. It's about pushing through the pain of today to meet the power of who you could become tomorrow. It's about honoring the future you more than you worship the comfort of the present. And when you finally grasp that, when you finally understand that every act of discipline is a sacred investment into a version of yourself that does not yet exist but must, everything begins to shift. You stop looking for shortcuts. You stop chasing hacks. You stop needing constant inspiration just to move. Because you realize that inspiration isn't what creates discipline. Discipline is what creates inspiration. When you show up consistently, even when you don't feel like it, even when no one is watching, even when progress is invisible, that is when you begin to forge the kind of identity that no one can take from you. That is when you become dangerous. Not to others. To your excuses. Understand this. There is a part of your brain that will always try to keep you average. It's ancient. It's primitive. It's wired to survive, not thrive. It will tell you to rest when you've barely moved. It will whisper lies to protect your ego. It will distort the truth just enough to make you believe that doing less is the wise choice. And the only way to beat it is with ritual. With standards that are set so deeply, they no longer rely on how you feel. Because your feelings are not facts. They are fluctuations. But discipline is divine. It's stable. It's unwavering. It's the language of those who refuse to be owned by weakness. People often ask, how do I stay disciplined? But that's the wrong question. The right question is, what do I revere? Because discipline isn't just a habit. It's a form of worship. It's the daily act of honoring something greater than your present appetite, your future, your mission, your potential. And if you don't revere those things, you will never stay consistent. Because discipline without reverence feels like slavery. But discipline built on sacred purpose feels like devotion. You want 6 months to change everything? Then you need 6 months of treating your goals like altars. Not hobbies. Not resolutions. Altars. Sacred places where you meet the version of you that does not compromise. Where you do not miss. Where your standards are not based on public approval but private promise. Where no one has to see you working to validate your work. Where you choose repetition over reward. Process over praise. Movement over mood. Because the truth is, most people will never make it far enough to see the results of their own potential. Not because they're incapable, but because they're inconsistent. They start strong. They speak loudly. They declare change. But they disappear when it gets repetitive. They vanish when it gets quiet. They get bored and call it a sign to stop. But boredom is not a sign to stop. It's a test of depth. And those who pass that test become legendary. Discipline is about embracing monotony with reverence. About understanding that greatness is never built in dramatic moments. It is built in small choices repeated with excellence over time. It's brushing your teeth every day, not waiting for the root canal. It's training your body before the health scare. It's mastering your mind before the panic attack. It's building your skills before anyone asks for them. And doing it every day, especially when no one asks. Because when the moment comes, when the opportunity finally appears, when the world opens the door you've been waiting for, you either are ready or you are not. And that readiness won't come from hope. It will come from discipline. So if you want to be the one who makes it, the one who rises, the one who transforms in a way so complete it becomes undeniable, then fall in love with the mundane. Fall in love with showing up. Fall in love with systems that don't need motivation to run. Fall in love with being the person who doesn't break when things feel repetitive, who doesn't need a crowd to stay consistent, who doesn't flinch when the voice in their head says, "You can skip today." Because that voice is wrong. You can't skip today. Not if you want to win. Not if you want to change. Not if you want to build something that actually lasts. Today is the only day that matters. And discipline is the only way through it. The next 6 months won't be decided by how inspired you feel. They'll be decided by how well you keep your promises when the inspiration disappears. And when it does, because it always does, you don't fall. You rise. Not by luck. Not by hype. Not by waiting for the right emotion to carry you. But by becoming the kind of person whose movement is non-negotiable. That's what discipline gives you. Not just progress. Power. Sovereignty over yourself. Ownership of your life. And the unshakable identity of someone who does not fold. Chapter 6, Action over Analysis. There comes a point when thinking becomes a trap, when planning becomes paralysis, when researching becomes resistance disguised as responsibility. And most people don't see it happening because it looks productive on the surface. They're making lists. They're watching tutorials. They're gathering information. They're mentally preparing. But underneath all of it, what they're really doing is stalling. They're standing at the edge of transformation, staring into the unknown, and trying to think their way out of the requirement to leap. But here's the truth. At some point, you must stop preparing to begin and begin. Because no amount of analysis will eliminate uncertainty. No level of research will erase risk. No perfect plan will ever arrive. You think you need more clarity, but what you really need is movement. You think you need more confidence, but what you really need is evidence. Evidence that you can take a step. Evidence that you didn't break when things got uncomfortable. Evidence that action, even messy, unpolished, unplanned action, is infinitely more powerful than sitting in circles with your thoughts while the world moves on without you. The mind is seductive. It will tell you to wait until you're ready. It will lure you into cycles of overthinking and convince you that your delay is wisdom. But real wisdom lives in execution. Real growth lives in friction. And most of the people who never change, never grow, never break through, aren't lacking potential, they're drowning in hesitation. They're waiting for permission. They're waiting for perfection. They're waiting for some imagined state of readiness that does not exist. You don't get to think your way to the next level. You earn your way through action. And action is messy. Action is ugly. Action is clumsy and awkward and full of mistakes. But that's exactly why it works. It's in the doing that you learn. It's in the movement that the mind sharpens. It's in the friction that your identity is rebuilt. Because every action you take is a vote cast for the version of yourself you're trying to become. And every day you delay is a vote cast for the version you're trying to leave behind. Let that sink in. Every moment of hesitation, every time you say, not yet, every time you say, I just need a little more time, you are not staying neutral. You are reinforcing the exact reality you claim to want to escape. You are not stuck because you lack information. You are stuck because you have trained your body to obey your thoughts. And most of your thoughts have been shaped by fear. Fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of wasting effort, fear of the unknown. But here's the secret. Fear loses its grip the moment you stop negotiating with it. The moment you stop explaining yourself to it. The moment you say, I'm going to move anyway. I don't need your approval to begin. The people who rise in life are not the ones who always know what they're doing. They're the ones who move anyway. They're the ones who feel the doubt and show up. They're the ones who fall in love with learning through motion, not just through mental rehearsal. You don't learn how to lead by reading about leadership. You don't get fit by watching workouts. You don't become powerful by consuming content. You become powerful by putting your body into environments that demand growth and refusing to retreat just because it's uncomfortable. That's the difference between people who dream and people who build. The builders don't wait to be ready. They decide. And that decision is not emotional, it's strategic. Because they understand that momentum compounds. One action, done imperfectly, creates the inertia to carry you into the next. And once you're in motion, you've already beaten 90% of the world, because most people never even start. You want the next 6 months to be different? Then you need to move like someone who's done negotiating with their fear. Like someone who's done treating action like a reward they have to earn. Action is the initiation. It's the first brick in the wall. It's what separates the version of you that fantasizes from the version of you that executes. Yes, you will make mistakes. Yes, you will have to adjust. Yes, you will have to move before you feel certain. But certainty is not the prerequisite. Courage is. The courage to begin when the outcome is unknown. The courage to keep going when the plan breaks. The courage to look foolish for a while on your way to becoming someone you've never been before. The world does not reward the person who thinks the most. It rewards the person who moves with clarity, adjusts with humility, and continues with obsession. It's not the idea that changes your life, it's the execution of that idea. And execution doesn't care about your mood. Execution doesn't care about your story. Execution responds to one thing: motion. So the question is not, what's the perfect next step? The question is, what step can I take right now? Right here. In this hour. With what you already know, what can you build? What can you clean up? What can you confront? What can you start? Because starting doesn't require permission. It doesn't require full clarity. It only requires one thing: the decision to move despite uncertainty. And once you start, you become something new, someone in motion, someone who doesn't flinch, someone who moves faster than doubt can catch up, someone who executes while others hesitate. That's the identity shift. That's the beginning of momentum. And once momentum hits, you stop needing to convince yourself every day. You move because that's just who you are now. You act because waiting has become unacceptable. You build because you have outgrown the version of yourself that asks for a guarantee before taking the shot. You want to change everything in 6 months? Then stop analyzing your life and start attacking it. With fire. With force. With conviction so deep that hesitation becomes unnatural. Because your dreams are not waiting on a perfect strategy. They're waiting on a version of you who is in the arena. And the arena does not reward the thinker. It rewards the fighter. So stop standing at the edge with your analysis. Step in. Swing. Mississippi adjust. Swing again. That's how the game is played. That's how legacies are built. And that's how your old life finally ends, with action. Chapter 7. Adaptability is survival. There is no version of transformation that unfolds in a straight line. No journey worth taking is free from detours, disruptions, unexpected storms, or brutal recalibrations. The fantasy of a clean path, where everything goes according to plan, where you ascend without resistance, is a lie sold by people who have never built anything real. Because in the real world, growth is violent. It's unpredictable. It punches you in the mouth when you least expect it. And if you're not willing to bend, you will break. Adaptability isn't weakness. It isn't compromise. It's not abandoning your vision. It's the maturity to recognize that the terrain will change, and that survival, true survival, the kind that turns into thriving, belongs to those who can pivot without losing their center. The most dangerous person in any room isn't the one who has the perfect plan. It's the one who knows how to respond when the plan collapses and still keep building anyway. You see, rigidity is comfort. People hold onto it like armor. They attach themselves to a specific outcome, a specific timeline, a specific process, and they fall in love with the picture in their head more than the reality in front of them. So when the weather shifts, when the market turns, when the people leave, when the resources vanish, they freeze. They mourn the plan instead of adapting the mission. And in that freeze, they die, not physically but mentally, emotionally, and creatively. Their energy goes to defending what was, instead of redesigning what could be. But the few who rise, the ones who make it through storms, losses, betrayals, failures, and still move forward, they understand something most never grasp, that you are not your plans. You are not your strategy. You are not the timeline you built when you were less experienced, less tested, less evolved. You are the builder. You are the architect. And when the old blueprint burns, you don't collapse with it. You stand in the ashes and draw something new, better, faster, more aligned with who you've become through the fire. Look at history. The greatest builders were not the ones with flawless execution. They were the ones with relentless adjustment. Thomas Edison didn't just invent a working light bulb. He invented 10,000 wrong ones first. Henry Ford didn't invent the car. He invented the system that made cars affordable. He adapted to the economy, to the labor force, to the psychology of the working class. Steve Jobs was fired from his own company, and when he came back, he didn't rebuild the old Apple. He built a new one that shaped the next generation of technology. These were not people married to their methods. They were married to the mission. And that's why they survived. If you want to change your life in 6 months, you need to understand this at your core. The speed at which you can adapt is the speed at which you will rise. When the business idea doesn't land, you shift. When the workout plan doesn't deliver, you adjust. When the environment becomes toxic, you remove yourself without apology. When the people around you no longer reflect where you're going, you outgrow them, not out of arrogance but out of necessity. This doesn't mean you're flaky. It doesn't mean you lack commitment. It means your commitment is to results, not rituals. It means your loyalty is to truth, not tradition. Adaptability is what happens when resilience meets intelligence. It's what happens when you stop trying to control everything and start learning how to respond to anything. And here's the hard truth most won't admit. Sometimes the biggest threat to your future is the version of you who refuses to let go of how things were supposed to happen. That version will cling to dead strategies. It will defend broken systems. It will keep you married to methods that no longer serve the vision, just because you invested so much time into them. But sunk costs do not equal destiny. Wasted effort does not mean you owe the past your future. The only thing you owe is progress. And progress demands evolution. If you're in a season where everything feels unstable, good. That means you're growing. That means the universe is shaking you out of your illusions. That means your old methods are being burned away to make space for new ones that reflect who you are now, not who you used to be. You don't need to fear instability. You need to become fluent in it. You need to become the kind of person who breathes calmly in chaos because you've trained yourself to see disruption as data, not defeat. Adaptability is not a passive quality, it is a muscle. And if you don't train it, life will train it for you. Through loss, through disappointment, through unexpected failure. You can either build your capacity to evolve intentionally, or you can wait for life to do it violently. Either way, you will be changed. The only question is whether that change will be by design or by disaster. This is why so few people finish what they start. Because they fall in love with the way instead of the why. They fall in love with the vision board, but not with the vision. So the moment the path shifts, they quit. Not because the mission failed, but because they were never really committed to it. They were committed to the fantasy, to the plan that made them feel safe. And when that plan cracked, so did they. But you, if you want to change everything, you have to become liquid. You have to become adaptable without becoming lost. You have to learn how to pivot without permission, how to shift direction without losing your center, how to rebuild again and again without dragging the weight of broken expectations with you. You have to learn how to let go fast, how to respond with speed, how to reinvent yourself not once, but as many times as the mission demands. Because the truth is, the world doesn't belong to the smartest or the strongest. It belongs to those who are still standing after everything changes. It belongs to the ones who say, "This didn't go the way I planned, but I am not married to the plan, I'm married to the outcome." So pivot, reinvent, detach, rebuild, again and again and again. That is how you survive. That is how you win. Chapter 8. Resilience is reborn in resistance. There is a version of you that only reveals itself in pressure, a strength you will never access until the moment everything in you wants to retreat, and you choose, deliberately, fully, to move forward anyway. That version is not found in comfort. It is born in resistance. And until you've been broken, doubted, ignored, misunderstood, humiliated, overlooked, and forced to rebuild more than once, you don't yet know who you are. Because resilience isn't a motivational phrase. It's not a quote you post on hard days. It's a choice you make when all other doors have closed and the only thing left to stand on is your decision to not quit. Most people think resilience is about staying strong. But that's wrong. Resilience is about returning to strength, again and again, after life, failure, or your own mistakes knock you flat. It's not about being unbreakable. It's about refusing to stay broken. It's the discipline of rebuilding even when the process of repair feels endless, even when no one applauds your comeback, even when the wounds are still fresh and the progress is still invisible. That's the difference. That's what makes someone unshakable. In this culture, we glorify ease. We chase lifestyles that look effortless, success that looks instant, and outcomes that appear to come without the cost. But real strength is forged in the furnace. The version of you who can handle anything, the one who isn't rattled by chaos, the one who doesn't shrink in the face of difficulty, that version doesn't appear by luck or through visualization. That version is trained in suffering. You earn that mindset through every resistance you refuse to run from. You become that version when you stop negotiating with pain and start inviting it to shape you. Because pain has purpose when you give it one. Failure has data when you stop resenting it. Loss has wisdom when you stop trying to avoid it. And every time you face resistance with resolve, you strip away another layer of your weakness and reveal a deeper layer of your power. Most people fear resistance because they associate it with failure. But what they fail to realize is that resistance is the gym where resilience trains. Without it, you stay fragile. Without it, you stay theoretical. But when you lean into it, When you stop flinching, when you stop running, when you look resistance in the face and say, "I'm not leaving until I learn what you came to teach me," that's when everything begins to change. Think of the people who inspire you, not the influencers, not the celebrities, but the ones who moved through hell and came back sharper. The ones who endured tragedy, betrayal, poverty, disease, heartbreak, humiliation, and used all of it as raw material. They didn't just bounce back. They came back different. Stronger, colder, clearer, with better boundaries, with sharper instincts, with a fire that couldn't be put out by mere discomfort anymore. That's not the result of luck or divine favor. That's trained resilience. That's the result of choosing to use pain instead of just survive it. But here's the thing no one tells you: resilience doesn't always feel like courage. It often feels like exhaustion. It feels like getting up when your bones ache, like starting over when your pride is bleeding, like trying again while doubt mocks you. It feels like being misunderstood by people you used to live for. It feels like isolation. It feels like walking into another day without the guarantee of reward. But you do it anyway, not because it's easy, but because this is who you are now. And that identity? That is the most valuable asset you will ever own. Not your resume. Not your money. Not your network. Your self-concept. The belief that no matter what comes, you will rebuild. You will not stay down. You will not disappear into victimhood. You will not outsource your strength to the approval of others. You will stand back up, clean your wounds, carry your scars, and keep going, not because you're fearless, but because you remember who you are. 6 months of resilience will change you in ways no victory ever could. Because when you learn to endure, you stop fearing loss. You stop fearing change. You stop fearing discomfort. And most of all, you stop fearing your own limitations. Because you've tested them. You've pressed against them. You've broken through some and been humbled by others. And that's what gives you real confidence. Not arrogance, not posturing, quiet, rooted certainty that you've been through worse and you're still here. That's the version of you the world cannot control. That's the version who doesn't need praise to keep going. That's the version who doesn't negotiate with pain. And the only way to meet that version is to earn them, by walking straight into the hard moments, not just once, but repeatedly, until your nervous system adapts, until your identity updates, until you stop waiting for the storm to pass and start learning how to walk through it with your eyes open. You don't become resilient by reading about resilience. You become resilient by getting hit and standing back up anyway. You don't become resilient by hoping life is fair. You become resilient when you accept that it isn't and move forward anyway. You don't become resilient by pretending to be strong. You become resilient by being willing to be weak first, by being willing to bleed, by being willing to be seen in your rawest, most unfinished form, and not quitting even when no one claps for your effort. This is the gift of resistance. It reveals whether your fire is real or if it only burns when it's convenient. So if you're in a storm right now, if everything feels heavy, if your progress feels slow, if your motivation has collapsed, good. That means this is your proving ground. This is the place where your new self is being built in silence. This is the season that will separate you from the people who only work when it's easy. And if you can learn to move here, when it's hard, when it's slow, when it's thankless, then nothing will be able to stop you when momentum returns. Resilience doesn't care how many times you've been knocked down. It only cares how many times you choose to rise. And you will. Not just to survive, but to dominate. Chapter 9. Learning is a weapon. There is a kind of hunger that separates the average from the unstoppable. A hunger not for applause, not for fame, not for comfort or comparison, but for understanding. Because knowledge, real, applied, weaponized knowledge, is the sharpest blade you'll ever carry. And in a world that moves at the speed of noise, where people are flooded with information but starved of wisdom, your ability to learn faster than you break becomes the difference between domination and decay. We were never taught this properly. Most people confuse education with learning. They think sitting in classrooms, memorizing theories, passing exams, and collecting degrees is what makes someone smart. But intelligence on paper is worthless without execution in the field. True learning isn't sterile. It isn't safe. It happens when life hits you in the face, And instead of collapsing into self-pity or denial, you study the punch. You analyze the failure. You pick up the pieces of your broken plan and ask, where did this fall apart, and what will I build differently next time? Because if you don't learn, you repeat. And life will keep handing you the same level of difficulty until you outgrow it. Not just emotionally, but mentally. You want to evolve? Then your greatest weapon is not your talent. It's how fast you process what life is trying to teach you. Because every situation, every setback, every betrayal, every delay is a masterclass in disguise. But most people are too bitter, too distracted, or too proud to study it. You have to develop a relationship with failure that isn't emotional, it's educational. You need to become obsessed with understanding what's underneath your patterns, your setbacks, your blind spots. Because the moment you stop making the same mistake twice, your ascent begins. But if you keep responding to difficulty by blaming others, by withdrawing, by quitting, by numbing, you will stay locked at your current level, convinced the world is against you, when the truth is much simpler, you just stopped learning. Look around. The most dangerous people in any field aren't always the most gifted. They're the ones who stay curious. They're the ones who show up to every experience like a student, not a master. They're the ones who know that their mind, when sharpened, becomes a force multiplier. A sharper mind means faster decisions, better positioning, cleaner execution, clearer boundaries, and a faster recovery from setbacks. A sharper mind compounds. It makes you more efficient, more effective, more aware, and less emotional in moments where clarity is power. Learning is what makes pain worth it. If you suffer without learning, you suffer in vain. If you fail without learning, you're just wasting time. But if you suffer and extract data, if you fail and extract clarity, then your setbacks become strategy. They become part of your arsenal. They become the reasons you will not be stopped the next time. And that is the difference between those who merely survive life and those who engineer their rise from every scar. Learning is not something you do occasionally. It has to become your lifestyle, your second nature. You need to become someone who studies everything: yourself, your habits, your reactions, your systems, your time, your emotions. You need to read people, read markets, read patterns. You need to look at your week and ask, what did I waste? Where did I hesitate? Where did I default to my past? You need to listen to those who have gone further than you, not with idolization, but with intention. Because even if you can't match their resources, you can match their mindset. You can match their willingness to extract wisdom from every minute, every meeting, every mistake. The world is changing fast. Technology is advancing. Markets are evolving. Expectations are rising. And if you are not learning, you are not just standing still, you are falling behind. Your competitors are reading. Your enemies are adapting. Your obstacles are learning how to beat you. So if you think you can coast, if you think what worked yesterday will work tomorrow, if you think once you reach a goal you can relax, you've already lost. 6 months of ruthless learning will do more for your future than 6 years of passive routine. If you approach every day like an apprentice, if you treat every mistake like a mentor, if you consume books, conversations, questions, patterns with the obsession of someone building an empire, you will accelerate beyond recognition. Because you will stop repeating the same level of problems and start solving higher-level challenges. That's what growth really is. Not just progress in action, but elevation in thinking. And the most powerful part? No one can take it from you. Not the economy. Not the algorithm. Not the relationship. Not the job. Once you've upgraded your mind, you stay upgraded. You walk into every room differently. You hear noise and extract signal. You experience pain and extract lessons. You encounter friction and extract improvement. And you become someone who can't be thrown off course by uncertainty because you've trained yourself to see everything as data. So what are you learning right now? And not just passively, what are you applying? Because knowing is not enough. Knowing and not doing is the same as not knowing. Knowledge that lives in your head but never reaches your hands is dead weight. It flatters your ego but feeds your stagnation. You don't need more theories. You need applied understanding. You need to be the person who moves fast because they've studied deep. The person who walks into chaos with a calm mind because they've rehearsed the worst and prepared anyway. This is what separates the capable from the elite. The elite don't need perfect conditions. They need only one thing: a reason to keep learning. Because once they have that, everything else becomes solvable. The right strategy? Learnable. The right team? Attractable. The right habits? Buildable. The right systems? Repeatable. The gap between who they are and who they want to be? Bridgeable, because they never stopped becoming students of the game. So if you want to rise, if you want to use the next 6 months to become someone no one recognizes, then you must treat learning like a weapon, not a phase. You must wake up with curiosity, go to bed with reflection, and walk through every failure with a magnifying glass, asking, what did this teach me, and how do I use it to dominate the next round? Your brain is a tool. Your knowledge is your leverage. Your hunger to learn is your advantage in a world full of people who think they already know enough. You don't need to know everything. You just need to be the one who never stops becoming smarter than the problem in front of you. Chapter 10. Climbing Without Apology. There will come a moment, if you're serious about changing your life, when you must finally outgrow the need for approval. You will feel it like a weight leaving your body, the moment you decide to rise without explaining, without softening, without minimizing your voice to make other people more comfortable. That moment is the beginning of freedom. Because the truth is, most people don't fear failure, they fear visibility. They fear becoming too big for the space they were told to occupy. They fear what others will say if they win too loudly. We are taught from a young age to stay in line, to be polite, to not disturb the order. Don't be too ambitious. Don't be too proud. Don't shine too bright. And so we learn to ask for permission before we act. We learn to disguise our confidence in casual language. We learn to water down our hunger so we don't seem arrogant. But what no one tells you is that every time you minimize your greatness for someone else's comfort, you build a prison inside your own mind. And eventually, that cage becomes so familiar you forget it was never supposed to be there. The moment you begin to climb, the moment you begin to separate from the version of yourself that tolerated mediocrity, you will feel it, the resistance, the tension, the guilt. Because climbing isn't just about elevation. It's about leaving behind the things that can't breathe at your new altitude. And that includes people, habits, stories, and most of all, your own outdated self-image. That's the part no one warns you about. Growth hurts. Not because you're breaking, but because you're shedding. And the shedding is painful not just for you, but for the people who have gotten used to the smaller version of you. Some of them will support you, quietly from a distance. Some will celebrate you, but many will feel threatened, even if they don't say it out loud. They will question your motives. They will call you obsessed. They will accuse you of changing as if staying the same was the goal. They'll say you've become arrogant, when in reality, you've simply stopped asking for permission to want more. And here is where most people stop climbing. Not because they lack the strength, but because they are still trying to carry the approval of people who never had the courage to climb with them. But if you want to rise, truly rise, you must develop the ability to walk away from the noise without resentment. You must learn to let people misunderstand you without chasing their validation. You must learn to keep building in silence when no one believes in the vision but you. And you must do all of this without apology. Because the second you apologize for your ambition, you invite the world to shrink it. The second you explain your growth to someone committed to staying stagnant, you give your power away. There is no version of greatness that fits inside the box of social comfort. You cannot break ceilings while keeping everyone else's feelings intact. You cannot lead while trying to be liked by everyone. You cannot chase a calling while begging for approval from people who never heard the call. And once you truly understand that, you begin to see your climb for what it really is, not a display of ego, but an act of responsibility. A responsibility to honor the gifts you've been given. A responsibility to stretch your potential until it becomes legacy. A responsibility to become the example you once needed. Because here's the truth, the climb is not selfish. Playing small is. When you rise, you don't just change your life. You create permission. You light the path. You become the evidence for others that their transformation is possible too. But that will never happen if you continue to apologize for taking up space. That will never happen if you keep making yourself relatable by staying broken. That will never happen if you keep diluting your fire so that people who stopped dreaming won't feel uncomfortable in your presence. And if that sounds harsh, good. It's meant to be. Because every time you hesitate to move forward because you're afraid of being too much, what you're really saying is that the opinions of others are more valuable than the life you've been called to build. And if that is your truth, then don't expect your reality to change. Because you cannot build something extraordinary while prioritizing comfort, yours or anyone else's. Climbing without apology doesn't mean arrogance. It means clarity. It means knowing who you are and refusing to shrink. It means knowing your path and refusing to explain it. It means walking into every room as a full version of yourself, whether it makes others uncomfortable or not. It means detaching from the need to be understood and replacing it with a commitment to be authentic. Because authenticity is a threat to systems built on conformity. And once you become truly authentic, you become uncontrollable. That's the energy required to change your life in 6 months. Not just work ethic. Not just planning. But a deep, unwavering decision to stop shrinking. To stop asking for permission. To stop apologizing for wanting to build something legendary. And if people don't get it, so be it. They are not supposed to. They're not climbing. They're watching. And you weren't put here to perform for the audience. You were put here to reach the summit. This is the turning point. This is the shift. This is the line in the sand. Either you climb and let go of the need to explain your hunger, or you stay where it's safe, where it's quiet, where everyone understands you and no one grows. You can't have both. And the sooner you choose, the sooner your life will start to reflect it. Climb like you were born for it. Because you were. And this time, no apology. Chapter 11. Gratitude is fuel, not fantasy. Somewhere along the way, we started treating gratitude like a spiritual decoration, something you sprinkle on top of a journal entry, something you post in a caption, something you use to escape your reality instead of engage with it. But that's not what gratitude is. Gratitude isn't soft. It isn't passive. It isn't the act of pretending everything is fine when it's not. It's not blind optimism. It's not denial wrapped in positive language. Real gratitude is warrior energy. It's the mental armor that allows you to fight through chaos without losing your center. It's the fuel that keeps you moving forward without becoming bitter. Because life will test you. No matter how hard you work, no matter how good your intentions are, no matter how clean your execution is, you will lose people. You will hit walls. You will be overlooked. You will get betrayed. You will be forced to carry more than you thought you could. And when that happens, when everything around you becomes heavier than expected, gratitude is not just a luxury, it's survival. It's the internal discipline of looking at the worst moment and still choosing to say, even this has something for me. Even here I can grow. Even now, I will not fold. Gratitude is not some ethereal daydream about being thankful for a perfect life. It's about being grounded enough to extract value from the reality you're in, no matter how flawed, no matter how painful, no matter how far it feels from where you want it to be. And when you learn to see your pain through the lens of purpose, when you start understanding that adversity was the weight that built your strength, that loss taught you to hold things with reverence, that discomfort forced you to grow, then gratitude stops being a practice and becomes a way of seeing. It becomes how you survive the climb. It becomes how you stay grounded when the pace gets brutal and the rewards are nowhere in sight. It becomes how you navigate days where nothing makes sense, when the people around you don't understand your ambition, when your progress feels invisible, when every part of you wants to stop and you still move forward anyway. Gratitude isn't there to remove the weight. It's there to remind you why the weight is worth carrying. And let's be clear, gratitude doesn't mean settling. It doesn't mean tolerating environments or relationships that drain you. It doesn't mean smiling through dysfunction. It means appreciating the opportunity to grow through the reality of what is, not the fantasy of what you wish things were. It means recognizing that every single breath is data. Every experience is feedback. Every moment is a window, and even the hard ones hold treasure if you have the courage to stop cursing them and start learning from them. When you live with gratitude, you stop comparing. You stop looking sideways at what everyone else is doing. You stop needing to prove yourself. You stop basing your worth on validation. Because you realize that what you have, your mind, your body, your capacity to adapt, your access to knowledge, your breath, your story, your ability to try again, is already more than most people ever use. You realize you're not behind, you're just not awake to how far you've already come. And once you wake up to that, everything changes. Gratitude creates presence. And presence creates power. Because when you are present, you stop running from your life and start showing up inside it. You start owning your time. You start taking responsibility. You start focusing on what's in front of you instead of obsessing over what's missing. You stop being paralyzed by what didn't work and start getting creative about what can. And when that shift happens, when you move from lack to leverage, from complaint to command, from wishing to building, you become untouchable. Because now your mind is anchored. Now your vision isn't based on what's missing, it's based on what you can do with what you have. Now you're no longer chasing a fantasy of success. You're creating success from the soil under your feet. And that version of you, the one who creates, who adapts, who builds while others wait, that version of you becomes magnetic. Not because you're lucky, but because you finally learned how to turn gratitude into energy. You want to change your life in 6 months? Start here. Start by taking inventory of the tools you've already been given. Your failures, your lessons, your hunger, your trauma, your past, your skills, your discipline, your setbacks, your silence, your survival. Everything you've walked through has given you something. Something real. Something usable. Something that can be turned into strategy if you stop resenting it long enough to study it. Stop waiting for your circumstances to be perfect before you begin. Stop believing the lie that you need something more before you can do something now. Start using what you've got. Start building from what's in your hands. Gratitude is not just looking back and saying thank you, it's looking around and saying, this is enough to start with. You are not at a disadvantage if you still have your will. You are not powerless if you still have breath. You are not behind if you still have vision. You are not lost if you still have the capacity to learn and act. Gratitude brings you back to now. And now is where transformation begins. Not next week, not next year, not when everything finally aligns. Now is the battlefield. Now is where you rise. So stop pretending you need more. Start becoming more with what you already have. Because if you can learn how to be grateful not just for what's easy, but for what built you, broke you, refined you, stretched you, then you've already beaten the version of you that stayed stuck waiting for perfect. Gratitude is not a soft feeling. It's a weaponized mindset. And when it's real, it doesn't just keep you humble, it makes you dangerous. Chapter 12. The Final Becoming. This is the part they never show, the final stretch. The quiet, brutal hours when no one is watching, when the adrenaline is gone, when the world has already labeled you as changed but you know deep down that the transformation is still happening in silence, still unfolding in shadows, still demanding more than you thought you had left. The final becoming is not the celebration. It's not the post. It's not the highlight reel. It's the internal completion of something sacred. It's the moment your mind and your life finally align not because of hype, but because of hard proof. You've walked the road. You've fought the war. And now you own the identity that used to feel like a distant fantasy. Most people think the end of the journey is the reward. But it's not. The real reward is who you had to become in order to earn it. It's not the body. It's not the money. It's not the applause or the change title. It's not the external upgrade. It's the internal anchoring. You are no longer the person who reacts to life. You are now the one who builds it. You no longer wait for opportunity. You create it. You no longer run from fear. You carry it with you like a tool, sharpened by fire and refusal. You no longer ask if you're ready. You move and let readiness catch up. This is the final stage, not a peak, but a threshold. The line where the old you cannot follow. Not because you're acting different, but because you've become different. It's not about temporary motivation anymore. It's about permanent standards. It's not about doing what's necessary until you get what you want. It's about becoming someone who no longer accepts less. Someone who doesn't collapse when the pace quickens. Someone who doesn't hesitate when the pressure rises. Someone who knows how to move forward, Not because the conditions are right, but because they have become the kind of person who cannot move backward. The final becoming is about integration. All those lessons, all that discipline, all those early mornings and painful nights, all the people you had to let go of, all the decisions you made alone, all the inner wars you fought while pretending to be fine on the outside, it wasn't for nothing. It was your refinement. And now the fire that once burned you becomes the light you carry. The silence that once scared you becomes the peace you protect. The uncertainty that once paralyzed you becomes the mystery you walk through with calm, focused steps. At this point, the surface-level noise of the world no longer seduces you. You've outgrown the desire to be seen by everyone. You've stopped needing credit from people who don't understand your calling. You've realized that the real power comes not from what people think of you, but from how unshakably you trust yourself. That's the true arrival. Not a location. Not a trophy. Deep, earned, irreversible trust in who you are, what you're building, and how far you're willing to go. You don't flinch anymore when people misunderstand you. You don't chase people who left you behind. You don't dwell on the missed chances or the delayed rewards. Because you understand that everything you lost made space for what you're now becoming. You see the world differently now. Not as something to prove yourself to, but as something you're actively reshaping with your choices, your clarity, your vision, your discipline. And that shift, that inner command, is what separates those who change temporarily from those who never return to who they were. You were never meant to stay where you started. And now, looking back, you understand that the struggle wasn't punishment. It was initiation. Every setback was a teacher. Every delay was a sharpening. Every lonely hour was a test of whether you were building your future for applause, or because you knew it was who you were meant to become. And now you know. You know it was always about this moment. The moment you stopped asking and started owning. The moment you stopped waiting and started walking like it was already done. This is the end of one chapter, but it's the beginning of a new standard. The version of you that walked in 6 months ago is gone. That person made excuses. That person hesitated. That person feared judgment. That person waited for permission. That person broke under pressure. But not anymore. Because now you've become someone else entirely, someone who finishes. Someone who climbs. Someone who leads. Someone who chooses, without apology, without distraction, without delay. So take a breath. Look at what you've done. Not in comparison. Not in vanity. In truth. You stayed. You built. You learned. You endured. You rose. And now, you don't go back. Not ever. Because this isn't a phase. It's not a glow-up. It's not a motivational sprint. It's an identity now. And once you claim it, truly, deeply, everything you touch moves differently. People treat you differently. You speak differently. You think with weight. You act with intent. You carry yourself like someone who's already paid the price. And that's the final becoming. It's not about chasing anymore. It's about walking like you belong here. Because you do.